one of the founding members of VIZ19, one of the Magnificent Seven back in the day when just a meager task force. So that means Phil's pretty old.
I know. That's what I was thinking. You're giving away my age. That's fine.
Well, no, it's right here for bio.
Oh.
Phil's a landscape architect with 34 years of construction experience. There's probably people in this room that aren't even 34.
Probably.
With the New York State DOT, while at the DOT, he served many functions from the visualization manager for the Office of Design. He was also the strategy and performance director for 8 years, the innovation manager for 4 years, and the BIM manager for 5. And like Sandra, he didn't do those all simultaneously.
Right.
Spread out. He's now with ARA,
Like
leading them with BIM and performance team. And without further ado, Bill.
Thanks, Chuck. Good morning, everybody. I just want to talk about, there's been a lot of discussion over the last day or two on why we need to do BIM. And I'm not going to go there, but I'm going to talk about measuring the results of BIM. So here we go. But first, I'm going to give you a little context of kind of where, from a New York State DOT perspective, where we were over the last 5 years. Then establishing performance criteria, why it's so important, how that was done, and then the benefit, cost, and return on investment analysis to date. So just to give some context, BIM for New York State DOT, and that's the perspective I'm going to bring, was more of a macro approach, the civil integrated management approach, whereas it's an information model. And it's not a project by project basis, but it's across the state. As we build this data, it's all one data set. This is an example of how that process works. It's a cyclical process. That data is used throughout. Okay, and just a quick explanation of 2D versus 3D and the process now, the new process that New York State DOT is instigated. We look at these plans and we say, this is Kew Gardens 3. Okay, here's the new design. Well, our process did include now a review, a quality assurance review of the model. It was developed by a consultant, and we internally were saying, wait a second, we're putting this out to bid. We need to check this model very thoroughly. And so when we did, we noticed a few things here. We had a couple of 36-inch water lines that were acting like speed bumps. So it's a part of the process that has to be implemented within your DOT. And I'm going to be speaking to people as if the audience is DOT. How many DOT folks do we have in the room? Okay. Okay, good. Okay. So this is an important new change to the process. So why do we measure our results? We talk a lot about BIM, implementing BIM, promoting BIM, advocating BIM, but if we can't measure it, we can't improve it. And when you start measuring things, you start to find surprises in process and results and ways of doing things. So these are some great quotes. I love this stuff. If you can't measure it and talk about what you're speaking about and express it in real data, then you really don't know a whole lot about it. You're just making assumptions. So managing performance, here's another goodie. Soak this one in. This happens a lot. We'll create a dashboard, and does the data have to be accurate? Well, sometimes. That's the bane of performance measurement. But where I'm coming from is that cartoon is a thing of the past. We have too much data to rely solely on politics. So why do we measure and track BIM indicators? And the heart of it is to be most informed, to make the best decisions, to achieve the best results possible, faster, and with least risk. That's what it's all about. And that's what New York State DOT is doing. So I think you've seen this in other areas. This is kind of a macro approach of why do we approach BIM. And this is a great resource, the Smart Market Report on BIM. The business value of BIM, extremely important to get your mind around these kinds of information sources to help us better understand BIM and implementing BIM. Impacts of BIM. Okay, we've got this from a macro point of view. Now New York State DOT wanted to look at, okay, let's measure it from a project and a portfolio perspective. And this is just a quick plug on dashboards. With our Recovery Act program, we had to have a dashboard that told us how we were doing with this because we had to report this data back to the federal government. More and more with the federal highway law, we're going to have to report our progress with the program development, with planning, with construction, with operations on a macro level. And so really dashboards are an easy way to do that. We tailored this to suit our needs, to report on those things that were important to us, whether it was DBE targets, whether it was spending, whether it was building up economic areas. We built our own dashboard, and it's easy to do, but very, very important. Okay, so here are our performance indicators. I've added a couple since the last time I mentioned this, I think back in February. Constructability, and these came out of a strategy mapping process within New York State DOT. Actually, it was done back in '06 when I was the strategy and performance director. We looked at all our projects in the program, whether down in New York City or out in Buffalo or Rochester, it didn't matter where it was, up in the Adirondacks. These are the key indicators for our program. So we applied them to BIM as well. Constructability, schedule adherence, cost adherence, that's what you see the most about. Quality, project management and control, risk management, business process management, which BIM will change, innovation, safety, earned value, data quality, integration, and the last one is new, leadership. So we had developed a BIM performance index indicator. That's where it was when I left in December with the projects that we had going, but we can't really publish that yet because we don't have enough data to really publish it statistically, but that's where we were. Things have changed a little bit since then. So the first one, constructability. Constructability is measured by buildability and bidability. So during the build-out process, and even at award, the contractor's looking at, okay, how are we going to build this project? Most of our projects for the BIM world are down in New York City, very complex urban environment. So as the build-out occurs, this is actual example on the Kosciuszko Bridge, K Bridge. We didn't know whether we could get a crane in there to lift certain members of the pier. And so what they did is they modeled it first, they tested all the movements, the digital twin kind of an approach, and said, yes, we can do this. They did it in the field and it worked without flaw. So that's constructability. Bidability for constructability. Bidability is at award. So when a contractor is looking at the model, can they build this and do they trust the data? That's what they look at that model for. And that model is more complete now than a typical set of plans. It gives them more reliable data in terms of original ground, et cetera. So what happens is they provide a bid that's a more certain bid. And so what we were finding is the bids are coming in lower because of the BIM model, because there's not any guesswork involved. Okay, schedule adherence. So now with BIM, we have these tools available to us. The critical path is scheduled and mapped to the model, so we can analyze on a day-by-day basis where we are with the schedule. They can map it out. The contractor can do that to say, okay, by such and such a date, we're going to be this far complete. A couple of years ago, we had a data point at award and a data point at almost completion. So we didn't have a lot of information in between to say, are we on schedule or not? Now we have tools that we can look at and analyze on a regular basis. And so we defined when we'll get together and look at the schedule with the contractor, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So this gives us a real capability that we didn't have in the past. And these are just some screenshots of the 4D animation that's tied directly. This again is Kew Gardens 3, tied directly to the work. Okay, cost adherence. Super important, especially to every DOT, but certainly to New York State DOT. So we have this little dashboard up on our internet site for every project. So with each and every project that is a BIM project, we've stayed on budget. So with the K-Bridge, another development and innovation was we also did a 5D animation with us. So 5D is tying all your payments to the model. So payments correspond with work performed, which is demonstrated by the model. And that's what occurred with the K-Bridge, and that worked flawlessly. This is just an example of how that was done. Quality. So quality really gets to level of development. We specify every element by LOD in our spec, whether it's design bid build or design build, and it's reviewed as a project is developed so that we understand what the level of quality is going to be for every item so we can assess it and review it. And again, it gives us more information to review as the project's being built. We know the level of quality based on the level of development. We can tell how things are going to be built out, and so it helps our quality immensely. I was going to do this survey, but I don't think we have time here today, so I'm not going to do this. So project management and control. BIM offers a considerable advantage here. In New York State DOT, we had a model management plan for every BIM project. So with that model management plan, everything is specified. The process, who's making what decisions throughout build out, throughout design, and then into operations. Our roles and responsibilities are described and laid out in the model management plan. So we have an expectation set. We know who's accountable for what. So for project management and control, this is extremely valuable. Every quarter, we would get together with the contractor, the construction inspection consultant, with the designers, with all the support staff, with the contractor, and say, okay, we play the 4D animation, we'd stop it at that day and say, here's where you're expected to be, where are you? So for communication coordination, there's not a better tool in the world to have that kind of discussion. This took place regularly, and it was extremely effective. More management and controls examples. It just gives you an ability to manage your project on a day-to-day basis or very closely, instead of letting the contractor go for a couple of years and saying, oh, how are we doing? Okay, let's see, I'm going to play this little animation here. I can find my mouse. Maybe I won't. This is another animation that just shows the 4D modeling tied with the 5D. I'm not going to play it. So, and again, for project management and control, anytime we wanted to, during this project anyways, we would put a drone up there, fly the project, take a look at where things were in the field to make sure they correlated with the model. So again, another ability to manage the work. This is an example of the model and examples in the field, and this was one of our first projects that we wanted to assess. Is the model really accurate, and is it on schedule as we anticipated? And this demonstrated that it was. And here's just another example of LOD, level of development. Again, we specify where everything needs to be in terms of what that LOD is. So for anywhere beyond like a quarter mile of the project, we didn't need a very high level of development. It just needed to be 100 for mostly mass and space to make sure we weren't impacting anything. Everywhere else, again, depending on whether it was structural or let's say it was landscape items, they only had to be at level LOD 200, things of that nature. So you can really manage what kind of data you're getting. And this is Kew Gardens 4. Again, more examples of in the project development process, looking at, okay, here's where we need cameras set. Here's where we need images for, could be public involvement purposes. We have the model to say, okay, we're going to specify 10 locations where we're going to use throughout the process for public information purposes. Or we need to monitor construction on these particular structures, and so we're going to describe that cameras have to be set there so that we can monitor the work. All again, helping us with project management and control. Risk management, hugely important. There was a great slide on the big dig. Well, the big dig is going to wish, they probably wish they did a real thorough risk management plan. I doubt they did. BIM gives us a better ability to look at and assess what are our possible uncertainties, external factors, internal factors. It gives us a chance to look at all that in a comprehensive way. And it makes us pay attention to risk a little bit more, which is a good thing. So our risk register is tied again to the project, the model management plan. Again, all collaborated in a much better coordination. So process. Yes, it's going to change your process. The BIM process is going to change internal ways of doing things with your internal staff and your external staff. We mapped it all out. This is just a glimpse of what that mapping took place, including the financial areas. And so we looked at that and said, here's our existing process. What does it need to change to? We looked at the data flow and how that needed to change. So it was more of a many-to-one relationship rather than many-to-many. Extremely important, that description right there, so that it goes into an enterprise database approach where we could extract any data we wanted from there. And if one system upgraded or changed, let's say it was Site Manager, there's an upgrade to Site Manager, it would only take the IT folks would only have to work on that one particular link from Site Manager to our enterprise database, not all the other links to talk to each other. Little things. Innovation. This came from a project from the field office saying, okay, today we have to do these passes with our machinery. Now we can look at it from a different perspective, and if I can find my mouse, I'd play the animation. And I can't. I don't seem to have my mouse where I can play it here, but unfortunately. So the BIM model-driven approach was on the left-hand slide. I'll have to describe it to you. Instead of showing it on a plan every day in the field office, it was an animation of, okay, here's what work is going to be taking place today with the slider on the bottom. And everyone in the modeler, the equipment operators, the AMG people, everyone knew what that work was. I apologize for not being able to show it to you. 2 minutes. 2 minutes? Oh boy. Okay. So safety. Again, BIM gives us an ability to know, okay, what work is taking place when. It's a safer environment. This shows airport work, just as an example, so that there's less unknown in terms of what's happening on the construction site. Earned value, that's another area that we're looking at. We're collecting data on that, and it gets at the cost and schedule, what's planned versus what was the variance, and then measuring the result. Leveraging data. BIM has substantial advantages in this area, and so it's really about the information model, and it's not about putting a project away and putting it in the drawer after it's done. It's an integrated model throughout the enterprise. This shows data quality and integration. Again, it was from planning into construction, into planning design into construction. In the design, we had built an animation showing the build out of the project. This is Kew Gardens 3 and 4. We were able to start both projects, Kew Gardens 4, early, 6 months early, because we had the knowledge of what work was taking place with Kew Gardens 3. We could analyze that. And so that helped us, again, advance the project faster. Data quality and integration, again, with fabrication, we did some tests with the fabricators. We sent them direct files, and we eliminated about 60% of the waste in the value stream. So again, just leveraging data. You have to think about it as information that's to be leveraged. Okay, leadership. This is the last one I wanted to say. Tom Warren, who used to be the head of Utah DOT, used to come and he would talk with us on CSS or performance management, things of that nature. And he'd say, well, if you don't do it, who's going to do it? So that's what this slide gets at. You're the champion. You're going to be the leader. You need to make it happen. And it's up to all of us to do this, to make it happen. Benefits. We've got pages of benefits that I didn't want to go into here. These are from our construction office, from our BIM, all our BIM projects. And I'll just touch about the accuracy of the data really helps achieve many, many things. Reduce risk, reduce delay. Better methods, improve communication, and now New York State DOT is doing a 3D model as a contract document. And we had to address that sign problem. So we've got an example of how to do that. So technology, some of the challenges, we talk about benefits, we have to talk about challenges. IT is certainly one of those challenges, complexity. How do we use this data? How do we integrate this data throughout all our different divisions, which are siloed? That is something we have to work through. Technology, internally, it's hard for us to keep up based on our processes, based on our purchasing capability. So that's going to be a tremendous challenge going forward. And then from a macro perspective across the country, inconsistent approaches by DOTs, you know, how do we develop a set of standards that all DOTs can use as a framework? That would be very helpful. And these are just some more takeaways. And the takeaway is we're still in the infancy. There are challenges, there are hurdles, we'll overcome them. So here's an example. We're not there yet, we're getting there. These are the various stages, but the more we obtain knowledge and guidance, the better. So, very interestingly, we talked about agriculture earlier. Agriculture has made tremendous leaps and bounds. 50 years ago, they used horses to do crops. Now, today, they have machinery that uses AMG. It's phenomenal. They use robotics in the barns to milk cows. It's incredibly innovative. Transportation has to get there. We're starting to understand the value. We're starting to go there. We need to get there. And that's it. Thank you.
Want to take the floor?